I think Micky van der Ven's development has been nothing short of sensational this season. I think he's been our best player this season, and I think so much of what he's doing is so much what I criticized him previously for. I think there's certain elements of his game where I thought he could really go up a level in, especially with his size, his athleticism, his power. I thought he was kind of sometimes playing within those physical capabilities. And I think this season he's really using the gifts that he's been given physically to take his game up a crazy level. I think the win against Everton last night showed everything that Van der Ven's developing so well this season. And my main criticisms of Van der Ven have been the fact that he's not great aerially previously, despite his massive frame and his ability to use that athleticism. He should have a great leap on him with the way that his kind of how explosive he is in terms of his power. I think the other main criticisms were at times he was a little bit too passive. So I think he always wanted to be the covering defender. And I think the best defenders are able to do both. And then his passing, I thought his ball carrying was always very strong. I want him to use it more still now. But I also think his passing through the lines to get to that kind of Romero level of ball playing, I think he needed to improve on that. I think against Everton, all those kind of criticisms, they were kind of answered. So if we first look at this challenge that Van der Ven put in here, I think previously he might not have made this challenge. I think he would be more interested in sort of covering this space behind him and not engaging and kind of using that pace that he has as more of a safety blanket and being a bit more concerned about kind of stepping up and being left out of position. But it feels like he's got that kind of Romero-esque style to parts of his game this season where he's really willing to be aggressive. And I think this has got to be credited to Thomas Frank and his coaching staff, because this isn't something I've seen from Van der Ven that often previously. But I think challenges like this where he meets the attacker really high and aggressively and can win the ball up high so we can sustain our attacks is something that he really needed to develop, and he really is getting there now. I think that is such a nice kind of blend of what he has to his game as well, because if you think about his ability to clean up in behind with that pace, we all know he has that. But the fact that he's now adding the ability to step up high and be aggressive as well, and not just be that covering passive defender, but also being front-footed at times as well, means that he's just becoming more and more complete. The second kind of criticism, I guess, I had of his game, and this is not a criticism of his game because, of course, Van der Ven has been a top defender since he joined Spurs. But this was kind of the thing that I thought, how does he take the next step? How does he become guaranteed world class? How does he become one of the best centre backs in the world? And part of that for me was always his ability to defend the box. I thought a man of his size should never be being beaten in the air, especially with how explosive he is, as I've touched on. And so if we take a look at part of the shape that he was in yesterday against Everton, I thought we spent a lot of the game defending our own box, and they have some tricky wide players, and I think they put in a lot of crosses. They tested our fullbacks 1v1, but they also put in a lot of good deliveries. And I thought Van der Ven, and Danso to be fair, but I think Van der Ven was that real leader there. And part of this was kind of his body language. He was a presence. He was always talking to his teammates. Obviously, he was the captain on the day, but I thought this kind of position where he's marshalling this sort of space here, previously, I'd be a bit more concerned with that because I never rated Van der Ven's ability to defend his own box. I thought he was a player who really thrived in a high line, but when he had to sit deeper and kind of be a bit more ugly in his defending, I thought he struggled at times. But yesterday, perfect. He read situations so well. He was aggressive. He was first at everything. He used that size and that height. He was a bit ugly at times, but he'd kind of shove people in those clever kind of ways you want your defenders to. And again, no concerns with his box defending yesterday, and pretty much most of the season, I think his box defending has gone up a level massively as well. And if Van der Ven continues adding these kind of defensive abilities to his game, he's going to be one of the most complete defenders in the world with that insane pace added to that. You're looking at a freak pretty much with all those attributes defensively. It's insane what he can become. And I've been critical of him because I think with his size, he can be so much better than what he has been previously. And he's been very, very good previously. But I think he could be even better. And I think this season he's starting to show those potential world-class levels. And I think the last point, which is something that I still think we could get more out of him for, is his ball playing ability. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be Romero on the ball. But yesterday, I did see him play a couple of nice passes through the lines with that left foot of his into the likes of Xavi Simons or Kolo Muani in the pockets. And I think with his crispness of passing, I think he's more than capable of doing this. I think his angles might be a bit limited, and I don't expect him to be able to make passes like that, for example. I think when he's coming across his body, it looks a bit awkward, looks a bit uncomfortable. But when he is able to play up the left, whether that's kind of down the flank here, whether that's through the lines like I just did there, I think he can be really, really good at that because of his potential ball striking. I think where him and Romero might differ a little bit is that Romero can add so much disguise to his passes because he can play at so many different angles. I think Romero could even play at more angles if he was instructed to, but I think Van de Ven is going to be quite limited to that left side because of how he can telegraph it. And at times he telegraphs it and it's very obvious where he's going to go, but because of his crispness of his passing and because of his kind of precision on his passing, he gets away with it. And so I think more and more he can be braver in his passing, and I think I want to see him carry the ball more. And I think, again, this is going to be down to instructions. I think not necessarily not all managers are going to want him to do that, but I think where he can lean into that to progress the ball, I think that's going to be really, really massive. And if he can add that passing ability and that carrying ability to what has been an absolutely elite defensive performance so far this season, I think you're looking at one of the best centre-backs in the world. I do want to touch on the fact that I think Romero has really rubbed off on him, not only in terms of presence and kind of leadership, but also in style. I think Van de Ven's learned how good Romero is at stepping in. And when Romero was absent yesterday, I think we saw shades of Romero in the way that he was being so aggressive and being really proactive in his defending. And when you've got a combination of that, like I said, the more passive side and the more proactive side, the sky's the limit for you. But I think also in terms of body language and presence, he's really kind of taking that leadership role in his stride. He looks like a real man on the pitch now instead of a boy. Like he's really carrying himself with that kind of responsibility and happy to take responsibility, like we saw with those 2 goals, which I haven't even touched on. Of course, those 2 goals were excellent. The idea that Van de Ven's now going to add goals to his game as well is scary, because obviously I think he's got 5 goals this season, which is a crazy record to have for a centre-back in October. But just both boxes, I think he's become such a presence where he wasn't before. And I think that presence added to what was already elite at his game. But if he could add that presence, I always thought he would go up a level. And I think he's finally showing that this season in terms of mentality, but also using his size and his athleticism more. I think it's scary to think what kind of centre-backs we have on our hands at the moment. And I think Van de Ven's even exceeding my expectations of him. I didn't know if he had this kind of side in him, but he's really shown that he does. And again, I think the credit has to go to Thomas Frank with that. But the thoughts of having someone like a back three-esque of Romero, Van de Ven and Vuskovic in 3-4 years, I mean, from set pieces alone, that is insane, but also so much to like there. And then Danso is absolutely reliable. I haven't really touched on him enough, but he was excellent against Everton as well. I think Thomas Frank is really instilling a kind of grit and hard work and a love for defending in that defence, and that is something that I think they haven't had before, especially at Spurs. So Van de Ven, I think, is really thriving, and the fact that he's developing this well, this quickly, is scary for the rest of the league, to be honest. But if you do enjoy videos like this, where I dive a bit deeper into Spurs and the players and the tactics, please do subscribe. Please do share this video with anyone you think might enjoy it, who's kind of loving Van de Ven so far this season like I am. And please do comment down below what you want to see next. There's plenty of ideas I have, but I also want to do what you guys think. So please let me know. And yeah, come on you Spurs.